Hello my friends, and welcome back to my channel. Listen, I just am not going to give up the truck videos, okay? So I parked a little bit different because the sun is not my friend, but it's okay. It's okay. Hopefully the sun doesn't invade and give us weird lighting like it did in the last car video I had. So today I have my May wrap up for you, and I just have a few stats. I'm going to tell you my top 6 reads of May, and then I'm going to go do reviews for books that I haven't talked about before. So I have talked about every single book that I have read, either in a mid-month wrap-up, a weekly wrap-up, or a reading vlog. So I will have all of those linked down below if you missed any videos and you want to know about a specific book I'm talking about. Yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. May was a fantastic reading month. I had so many great books that I read. And yeah, so my stats for the month of May, I read 21 books. So a lot of the reason why that number is so high for me, that's a pretty high number for me, is that one, I was out of a reading slump, so I was really burning through audiobooks quite quickly. 2, I read a lot of novellas. Like, I think I read something like 5 novellas, which is a lot, so that made the number higher. And yeah, I think that overall I found some books that were really hitting me, and that made me want to pick up more books. You know, I think that's something that really causes a lot of reading slumps. If you continuously find books that are just like meh, or that are like disappointing, then I feel like, for me personally, I'm less inclined to want to pick up a book right away. So when I have a lot of books that I'm really liking, then I'm more likely to want to just find the next one and the next one and the next one. So anyway, not that that's new information to anybody. So I had, out of the 21, one of them was a reread, one was a DNF, and 2 of them were ARCs. I mean, technically 3 were ARCs, but 1 I read after the publication date. So I had 4 6-star books. Wow. 9 5-stars. Again, a lot of those little novellas were in there because they were just like powerhouses. And I think I'm definitely going to have to rethink my opinion of novellas, because I think that I've definitely came into them with a bias, just assuming that they're nothing but smut. I know they're not all like that, but I think overwhelmingly a lot of them are, and the ones that I read were beautiful little emotional stories, and I just adored them. I had 4 4-stars, 2 3-stars, and 1 2-star. So overall, a very good reading month. Like, the overwhelming majority are 4-star and above, with most of them being 5-stars. Like, what? Okay, so let's go on to my top 6 books. I'm going to just say the title. I've reviewed these in previous videos and put a picture right here so that if you want to know what my favorite books of the month are and you want to pick them up yourself, you can do that. So the first book of the month, so these are my top 6, not in any order, although this one was my favorite. Forever Your Rogue. Adored this book so much. Wonderful historical, indie author, fantastic. Soft Flannel Hank. Absolutely loved this contemporary slight paranormal romance. This is If Charlie Swan Got an HEA. I just loved this book so much. Very impressed with this author. Divine River. This is an deeply emotional novella. This was recommended to me by Samantha from Books with Samantha. I adored this book. Loved it so much. Hostile Takeover by Christina C Jones. This was my first Christina C Jones, and I was deeply impressed with the way she built her characters, with the romances, with her storytelling, with the way she puts words together. A very gifted, talented author that I think deserves a lot more hype than she's getting. Even though I feel like everybody who reads romance knows of her, especially if you have any interest in Black romances or diverse romances, but she does not get the hype that she deserves. Like, she's fantastic, and I think more people should definitely be talking about her and reading her. Another Christina C Jones that was one of my favorites was Equivalent Exchange. This book was so good, I'm going to talk about that one in just a minute. And then my last favorite of the month was Grim and Barrett by Juliet Cross. So those are my top 6 books. Now let's go ahead and get into the reviews for the books that I haven't talked about. So this book is one that actually should have been in my last weekly reading wrap-up, but I forgot to talk about it because the light was moving and I was getting all frazzled and I just skipped it. So this book is In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. This is a contemporary romance. I've been hearing so much about this book specifically. I did read Love Light Farms in December and I liked it. I gave it 4 stars. And this one I also ended up giving 4 stars. I really enjoyed this. I think the writing is superb. I think she has a really great master of her craft. She's very good at making it very readable and also giving you these hints of emotion into her characters' inner thoughts and how they feel about each other in the relationship. I really, really like how she does that. This is basically about our hero, Beckett, and our heroine, Evelyn. Evelyn is like a social media star, and Beckett works on a farm, and they end up having this one-night stand, but they can't stop thinking about each other. Like, Beckett specifically is just like having all these visions about her, and like she's like wormed her way into his brain and he can't stop thinking about her. So they end up meeting together again when she shows up at the farm where he works because of like a social media contest or something like that. So it is a second chance romance in that way. And this book was honestly like, this book was good. This book was solid. It was very pleasant, you know, like honestly I don't really have any critiques about this book except for one very minor thing at the end when they have their third act conflict, their third act breakup, and there is a moment very specifically that seemed very loud and clearly telegraphed to the reader when the heroine says, "We're not having a miscommunication." And it just felt like she put that in there so that readers would be like, oh, this isn't a miscommunication. So that irritated me. I don't ever like it when I can see the author's hand very clearly telegraphing something to the reader. Like, we knew what it was. You didn't need to tell us that. Like, come on. Anyway, that was something that annoyed me a little bit. But really the reason this book is 4 stars is just because it didn't necessarily wow me, but there also wasn't anything about this that I have super serious critiques about. I think this is a very solid romance. I think she's a solid writer. There were moments in here, specifically towards the end, where I just really was feeling the emotion between the two of them. But overall, this sort of just lacked the punch to make it a 5-star for me. It just wasn't hitting me quite the way I wanted it to, and I think that's really just a personal preference type of thing. So I don't think there's anything really wrong with that except for that one minor thing that bugged me that I pointed out, which I wish authors would do a better job of trusting their readers to pick up what they're putting down. That is something that I think is drilled into people when they take like fiction writing or any type of literary class in college or university. Like, that's something that you get told a lot, is to trust your reader. Don't spell it out for them. And the amount of authors that I see spelling crap out for authors just drives me absolutely nuts. And this author specifically doesn't need to do that because her writing craft is very strong. She doesn't need to do that. So that's a little personal pet peeve. That's something that I feel like I'm hypersensitive to, and when I see it, I get irritated because that's like breaking a cardinal sin. Trust your readers. They're smart enough to know what you're putting down. Anyway, I didn't mean to harp on that for so long because, again, it's a very minor critique. I really liked this romance. It was just slightly lacking on the emotional impact for me. And again, I think that's really just a personal preference type of thing. I don't think there's a thing wrong with this book. It just didn't quite hit me the way I was hoping it would. Okay, so now the next book that I read is Child of the Prophecy by Juliette Marillier. I am continuing on with my deep dive into Juliette Marillier's backlist because the whole reason that I picked this author up is because my dear friend Jessin absolutely loves her. I love hearing everything she has to say about the books, the stories, the writing, the romance. I could listen to Jessin talk about these books forever, and I love them. So I gave this book 5 stars. This is the conclusion to the first trilogy. So the Seven Waters series, I think it's 6 books, and the first 3, this is book 3, is about the original trilogy. That's really sort of like the original family and their kids and then their kids. So I feel pretty accomplished that I finished the first trilogy, and I really love this. I gave it 5 stars. This book specifically really does a good job of tying up all of the loose ends that I felt were there in the first book. So we get to see what actually happens to the villain, like what her whole motivation was in the first place for coming to Seven Waters. We get a lot of conclusion to those dangling threads that were left in the first 2 books about what happened to the family, what happened to the brother with the swan wing, what is happening with the magic in this land and why is it so important, and why are the Seven Waters family so important specifically. So I really, really loved that we got a lot of answers to those questions. I loved that this was mostly about our heroine, Fane, who is, I think that she's maybe 14 when this book starts out, so she's quite young. I really liked watching her journey as she went through this book and the inner turmoil that she constantly has between doing what's good and what's right, and then sort of feeling the seductive pull of Una, who is her grandmother, who is like the evil sorceress from book 1. I thought that was done so well here. I really, really love how Juliette Marillier dives into morally gray concepts in her books, and I think she has such a good balance on making her characters feel very real and believable, and like they want to do good, but they undeniably feel this pull towards this darker. I think she does that so well, and that is a concept that can so easily be overdone, melodramatic, doesn't feel like there's any nuance at all. And if there's one thing that I think Juliette Marillier does really well, it's nuance. Like, she really explores these concepts, and she makes you sort of explore them as well and think, is this actually the best option? I can see why they would choose this way, or I can see why they would choose that way, and it's so well done. So I really loved that. I loved the conclusion of the story, the story thread that was open in Daughter of the Forest in book 1. This one, of all the 3 in the series that I've read so far, has the weakest romance. That doesn't bother me, because I enjoy the romances in these books, but I go into it thinking this is going to be a beautiful fantasy, and that's exactly what it is. So the romance is sort of like a bonus. So this one didn't hit as hard on the romantic development as the previous 2 did. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. My favorite of the first 3 is definitely Son of the Shadows, which is the second book, and then Daughter of the Forest, and then Child of the Prophecy. So if you're looking for something that is just deeply mythologically, beautifully fantasy driven, I would highly recommend this series if you haven't read it yet, because they're beautifully written, they have excellent characters, and a great family dynamic too, and they're just wonderful. It feels like, you know, I picked this book up sort of after I had read Fourth Wing, which I personally did not enjoy at all. I had a lot of issues with it, and going from that fantasy to Juliette Marillier's fantasy just felt like it felt like dipping into a cold stream on a hot day. It was just like this sense of relief, like, this is beautiful writing, you know? So I adored it, and I can't wait to continue on in the series and to read more from Juliette Marillier. Okay, so now we enter into a little bit of my Christina C Jones era. Like, I picked up Hostile Takeover by her earlier in the month, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop thinking about the way her writing just sucked me in. She has such a great grasp of her writing craft, and I think one of these books in here, I can't remember which one it was, I can't remember if it was Equivalent Exchange, but one of these, in like the author foreword, it said like, this is my 50th project, and I was like, whoa, like, this is a very prolific author, and it shows. Like, her writing is very polished. She really has a great command of just putting words on the page in a way that makes you get sunk in and swept away in the story. But something she also is really, really good at is characterization. Her characters feel like real people. They feel like you know them. Like, almost from the first page, I feel like I know these people, I can relate to these people, I understand their point of view, and I am here for wherever she's taking me on this journey. So that's how I felt of all of the books I've read from her. So I've read this entire series, the Night Shift series, which is Equivalent Exchange, and then 2 novellas, and then I read Hostile Takeover. So I've read 4 of her books, and I can't wait to dive more into her backlist. And every single one of her books has made me feel that same way. Like, I get captivated right away. I get really invested in the characters. I love how immersive her worlds are. I love the family aspect. She has great family dynamics and just like great friendships. And I'm talking about all the stuff that isn't necessarily romantic, which her romances hit so great because she creates characters, heroes specifically, who are just obsessed with the heroine. Like, completely gone for her. Just in the best possible way, head over heels in love, and I adore it so much. And the women of all of the books, they're all very, very strong women, very strong, can take care of themselves. But the thing that I really like about how she writes her women in the books that I've read is they're very strong, but they're not afraid to be vulnerable with the hero. They're not afraid to sort of, not necessarily give in, but to open up and to allow him to sort of like take care of her in a certain type of way, you know. In a way that doesn't make her feel weak, you know. I love it so much. I love that type of a balance in a romance where, specifically when the man is very strong and very protective and is, you know, wanting to take care of her, and the woman is very strong too, but she allows him and she sort of craves that opportunity to be taken care of. I love it so much, and I think she does that really, really well. So Equivalent Exchange is about Karis and Lakin, And they end up meeting one night at a bar, and they have a one-night stand, and that's sort of how their relationship begins. She is a graphic designer, and she just lost her job because her boss is also like her ex-partner. And they ended up separating or like breaking up because of some stuff that he had done to her, which ended up, her relationship ended up abusive, and that was why she left. So she shows up at the bar that night with like a big bruise on her face from, you know, her ex who beat her, and she managed to escape. And this whole series, this Night Shift series, has a little bit of a, almost like a paranormal or like a mystical element to it, where there's something supernatural happening here. So Lakin is the hero, and he's starting to build his own like line of craft beers, I guess. I don't know anything about alcohol, but and his father is very well known for, like, I think it's bourbon, Kentucky bourbon. And Lakin wants to branch out and develop his own line of beer, so that's Night Shift is the bar, and everything is centered around there. And he had a brother who sort of was a little bit almost like clairvoyant. He could tell the future, and he ended up passing away due to some, you know, like, he very, very much struggled with mental health, and he was like self-medicating, and he overdosed and died. And it continues to like communicate with them, specifically Lakin, the hero, through dreams. And one day he tells Lakin in a dream that his soulmate is going to come and find him, and he'll know because she's marked. And so when Karis shows up with a bruise on her face in the shape of a phoenix, which was his brother's name, he's like, this is it, this is the sign, this is my soulmate. And it's very, very interesting because, you know, the hero is like 40 and she's 37. They've both just left long-term relationships. Like, he's been married before and he's divorced, and now they find each other, they find their soulmate, they find their life love in this relationship. And a lot of the book is not necessarily hugely plot-based, it's very much character-driven, but plot things obviously happen. But a lot of it is very mundane stuff that regarding like the bar and his family and her family, and how they're going to work together to bridge this relationship from just a one-night stand into something deeper and longer lasting. And it was just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So this is like a soulmates, fated, kismet type of thing. I adored this book, and I want everybody to read it. It was fantastic. So the next book in the series, oh, also Equivalent Exchange was a 6-star read. Did I say that? 6 stars. Absolutely loved it. Seriously, this book was everything I could have wanted in a romance. I just loved it so freaking much. It was fantastic. Okay, so the next book in the series was Prior Affair. This is a novella. So this whole series, Christina C Jones, she writes exclusively black romances, and I really, really love that. So this book is about Haley and Ellis. So Haley comes to the town where Night Shift is, and she is trying to remodel or like restore this old house that is in her family's histories from just past slavery times, when they were actually free and they were able to purchase property. And this is how this family has like been passed down to her through her generations. So she takes it upon herself to come and restore it. She wants to do that. So the first night that the book opens, there's a huge fire, and the home is pretty much destroyed, and the firefighter Ellis comes in and rescues her. And, you know, she's left without anything the next day. She doesn't have any clothes. She doesn't even have like a cell phone charger or a toothbrush. And he sort of takes care of her, makes sure she gets safe in a hotel room, and then when they part, she slips him a key to her hotel room. And this begins another like sort of only physical affair between the two of them. But they feel like this connection, like they know each other, like they keep asking each other, have I met you before? Like they have this sense of knowing one another that goes beyond just, we met this one night, you saved me, and we had, you know, a great time together at night. And the book continues to progress. It's a very short novella, but man, this one packed a huge emotional punch. And it's, again, featuring like soulmates, a little bit of reincarnation, some really great history, some excellent characters. Just absolutely loved this one. Gave it 5 stars. Fantastic. Okay, so now the next book is Prior Affair. This is also in the series. So this book I gave 5 stars. This is a 53-page novella, and it is a Christmas novella, and I read it in the summer, and I still gave it 5 stars, y'all. This book really, truly blew me away. I really loved it. I was very impressed with how much was contained in these 53 pages. This is more like a slice of life, like a moment. This isn't a complete story arc like I feel like Prior Affair is as a novella. I think that's definitely more of a completed story arc. So Faded Memories has our heroine Qatari, and she is just come back to night shift. She is part of the family, like extended family, so she's going to taking on a new job at night shift. She is recently divorced. Her husband served her divorce papers at the Christmas party that she had planned for their company together, and so she's really, really struggling and dealing with a lot of that emotional damage, as you can imagine, from something so devastating. And she's trying to make a name for herself. She's trying to figure out what she wants in her life. And so she works at the night shift bar, and one day she ends up meeting with somebody to see if they will carry the night shift beers. And lo and behold, it is the man who she had a very strong connection with about 10 years earlier in her life. And they attempt to start anew together. So I loved this. It again had a little bit of like a mystical, supernatural type of vibe. I just loved it. This series was fantastic. I'd highly recommend all of the books in here, but Equivalent Exchange is still my favorite, and then Prior Affair, which I also really, really loved. Okay, so now the next book that I have to talk about is In Which Margot Halifax Earns Her Shocking Reputation. So this again is a novella. This is a historical romance novella. I had seen some quotes circulating on Twitter. I get a lot of book recommendations from Twitter, actually. I think there's a really good romance community over there that actually recommends books that I think are good. But this one, unfortunately, didn't knock it out of the park for me. I gave this one 3 stars. However, I will say I was very impressed with the author's writing. I thought it was really superb, like excellent writing. Like, she has a ton of potential. The storytelling in this didn't quite hit the mark for me, so 3 stars. This is basically about our heroine, Margot, and she is part of a twin. Her twin is, I think, Matilda, and both of them are sort of known. I think it's like the Halifax Hellions, because they're kind of stirring up trouble. A lot of this book had a theme of we're young women, we're gonna, live scandalously, but we still want to, make that socially acceptable, sort of like trying to break those gender norms which were really ruling supreme at the time for women. And in that way, I feel like it was hard for me to suspend my disbelief in this short novella, because it just seemed very unrealistic. It didn't feel historical in that way. This felt like a very modern women point of view in a historical setting, and I don't love that. That can work for me, but it didn't quite work here. And I think that if the author had had a full book to tell that story, maybe it would have worked for me better. But just because it was so short, it really truly didn't. There's like a bunch of guys doing yard work over here watching me talk to my camera, which is propped up against a water bottle in my truck. It's fine. Anyways, so the tropes in this book are road trip, only one horse, brother's best friend, virgin hero. Probably more in there. It's just trope filled. And it really is about Margot ending up trying to go and chase down her twin sister, who has run off to Gretna Green to get married to this guy that she believes she's in love with. Margot thinks she's not in love with her, so she wants to go love with him. So she wants to go rescue her. She asks her dear friend Henry to go along with her. And Henry, of course, is in love with her, like deeply in love with her. That was the best part about this novella, is like this man was gone for her, like completely out of his head, gone for her. And it was just a beautiful thing to see. And I think the author also did a really good job of showing how he felt for her in a way that transcended just physical, because this book is very steamy, it's very short, and it did really rely on sex to move the story forward, which I don't personally like at all. But I did think the author did a good job of showing the hero not just lusting after her. Like, there were so many moments when he thought, like, tenderly about her, like cradling his head to her to his chest, cradling her head to his chest. I'm getting flustered, okay? And it was just really beautiful in that way, but it wasn't enough to make it a great read for me. And I think that's also partly because the heroine was just difficult for me. I really, really get tired of these heroines in historical romance who just want to like buck the system. And I love a good theme in a book, but I don't love it when it's these stupid heroines who are literally going against the system, doing things that they couldn't possibly do at that time just to progress the story's theme forward. Like, it reads as very immature, young, underdeveloped, and I just don't like it. So I struggled with the heroine. So I don't know that this author did a great job with the short format. I think that, again, a longer book from her I would really enjoy. The only way to get this novella, by the way, is from the author's website. If you go to her website, sign up for her newsletter, you get a link to download these. Her debut novel, full-length novel, comes out in 2024 from St. Martin's Press. So I will be checking that out, but I'm not super interested in reading more short form from her, because for me, she didn't deliver. And I think that was made very obvious to me because I had just read the Christina C Jones, which definitely delivered. 53 pages, and I was completely satisfied. Come on, that's talent, you know? So this one was a bit of a miss, but I am interested in reading more. I think this author has a lot of potential. And then the last book that I read was a reread, and I don't know how much I need to say about it, but it's Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. I freaking love Cassandra Clare. She's just such a comfort author to me. Obviously, this is wrapped up in a lot of nostalgia. I love her books. I've been reading them since 2008, which is a very long time. What is that? 15 years? I, however, have only read this book once before, and I originally gave it 4 stars. This is the first of a new series, her latest series. This is featuring Tessa and Will's kids from the Infernal Devices. So this is their kids, and then we have all of the other families that we remember from the Infernal Devices. And we have new plots involving demons, shadow hunters, and I just love it. You know, I was aware, this is the first time I've read Cassandra Clare in about 3 years. I mean, I read this book when it came out in 2020. I was very aware that, you know, she's hitting the same beats that she hits in every story, but somehow I find myself just absolutely entertained and just going for it. You know, she does angst in her romances so well. She writes characters who feel true to their age but don't feel immature, which I just love so much. And yeah, this was just a great time. So 5 stars for this. Originally I gave it 4 stars. This time I'm like, no, this is a 5-star read. And now I can continue on in the series, because now I can get to the books I haven't read from her, which are the last 2 books in this series. So, alright, there you have it. That is my May reading wrap up. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one.